But I want to answer a question from one of you guys. I asked it this morning. I asked for some questions from some of you guys. And this is what I got from Big Bend Benji. Thank you for the question. The question is, what is Jeff Hafley going to do if players in his corner room start getting injured? A very good question. And so I sort of want to add on to this as well. Can the Packers sustain this success, with the current corners they have if there is an injury? Thanks, Benji, for the question. I think when it came to the whole Jaire Alexander situation, in my mind, before he got released, it really felt to me like, given the situation, given the lack of top corners drafted by the Packers, waiting till round 7, it felt to me, when you have a competitive roster like the Packers have, why not just decide to keep Jaire Alexander? Why not decide to keep him around? And clearly he didn't want to accept the deal the Packers gave him. I don't think the Packers offered enough, to be honest, because Jaire's dad shared, I touched on the channel in the past month, that if Jaire would have gotten the same offer the Ravens gave him, he would have accepted it. So Jaire could have stayed here. Now, was there a risk of him getting injured? Yes, he's played in 7 games each of the past 2 seasons. But if he were to stay healthy come playoff time, the Packers are a much, much better team in the playoffs if Jaire Alexander is on the roster. So I understood the Packers moving on from him and not giving him some kind of offer that he was willing to accept. But at the same time, I do think the Packers would be a better team right now if Jaire Alexander was on the roster. I think it shows you that the Packers do have a ton of confidence in Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon. But for any team in the NFL, when you think about, injuries, of course, you plan the best that you can. You fill your team with as much depth as possible, but you do have restrictions when it comes to salary cap space. Not every position is going to be quite as solidified as some of the other ones. But as I was thinking about this question, because of some of the versatility in this corner room, it almost gives them almost like as if they had another player. Not fully, but there's some in a sense that they sort of have an extra player, if you can follow my logic here. So Nate Hobbs can play inside, can play outside. Keyshawn Nixon can play inside, can play outside. Javon Bullard can play inside. Carrington Valentine can play outside. So let's say Carrington Valentine goes down. Because Nate Hobbs is versatile, Jeff Hafley has talked about it, he can play slot, he can play outside. He could go play as the outside corner with Carrington Valentine getting injured. And Hobbs did play in OTAs in the base defense with 2 corners as the outside cornerback a lot with Keyshawn Nixon. So Carrington goes down. You could put Nate Hobbs outside. You could bring Javon Bullard in at nickel. Let's say Keyshawn Nixon goes down. Same thing. You can put Hobbs at Nixon's spot, bring Bullard in. And so because of that versatility, it does give the Packers a little bit of breathing room at cornerback. But I just think that Jeff Hafley, he's a very, very good defensive coordinator. And to do what he did in his first season was pretty remarkable. And I think, you look last year, the Packers were without Jaire a majority of the season, with him only playing 7 games. And the Packers had a very, very good secondary. 11th in pass yards per play allowed, 3rd in EPA, expected points added per play allowed. And so Hafley was able to sort of make do with what he had with Jaire going down. And I think a ton of that has to do with Carrington Valentine playing pretty good football. And I do think he's a little bit underrated, as I stated earlier. But all in all, I think that, let's say, if there's one injury in the corner room, let's say Carrington goes down for a while, or let's say Keyshawn goes down, I think the Packers have the pieces to sustain those type of injuries. Now, if you start losing multiple pieces like Carrington and Keyshawn, that's where things get a little more tricky, just because we don't know what this depth is, how good some of these depth pieces in the corner room are going to be. You have Micah Robinson, 7th round pick, 2025. Maybe he comes through as a great player. Who knows? Kalen King, maybe he in his second season can take some strides forward. You just don't really know until, the opportunity arises. And I think the Packers are, confident in some of these players on the depth chart. And then, of course, you got Bo Melton, who has been testing out corner during some of the offseason, practices. So you never know there. maybe they try him out more there because the Packers have so many wide receivers right now. And because of that, I mean, Bo Melton has definitely been pushed down the roster. You got Matthew Golden, you got Savion Williams, you got Jaden Reed, you got Romeo Dobbs, you got Christian Watson when he comes back. And so, Melton's, sixth receiver potentially? And so maybe if he goes to corner, something could happen there. He's a great athlete. He's super fast. I saw some player say that he was I'm pretty sure I saw this. He's either a player or coach. Someone saw that he was pretty sticky in coverage. Maybe he was a reporter. I forget who. But you never know there. Maybe Bo Melton is a solid player. So I just think all in all, one injury, I think they can sustain it. Multiple, that's where it gets a little tricky. And maybe if you're the Packers, you get to the end of training camp, and let's say you're Brian Gutekunst and you look at the roster and you say, I'm not trusting this corner room. I'm not trusting that we have enough depth if there's an injury. Then you can do something like trade a 7th rounder for someone else, for someone you think could come in and be a good depth piece. You look at last year, Brian Gutekunst looks at the quarterback room. He says, Sean Clifford, Michael Pratt, yeah, they're not going to cut it. We saw them play in the preseason. It wasn't great. And so because of that, Gutekunst goes and makes one of the best moves of the year for the Packers, sending a 7th rounder for Malik Willis, which translated to multiple wins for the Packers. So if you get to training camp and let's say you're not really satisfied with the corner depth after the whole preseason, you can try to sign someone off of someone's practice squad. Maybe someone gets released who you think is an upgrade. There's just a lot that you can do. So all in all, I'm not that concerned about the corner room. I think that they have enough. I think that they have a lot of talented players. And you even look at that game against the Eagles in the playoffs. Overall, the secondary played a fine game. They held A.J. Brown 1 reception, 10 yards. If I told you that before the game, you'd say, man, that's solid. To hold the other team's best receiver, one of the better receivers in the league, to 10 yards, it was a solid day from the Packers secondary. The main issue there was Saquon Barkley having 25 carries for 119 yards. So I think that there's a lot to be hopeful for in this Packers secondary. And as I said, one injury, I think we're fine. Multiple, that's where you get a little bit concerned. But that's the same for any position group typically around the NFL. There's only so much money to go around. You can't, if there was no salary cap and you're the richest organization, you could fill in some more holes. But there's a salary cap. You're limited to what you can do on the depth area. And I think it comes down to some of these younger players developing and playing very good football. But I appreciate you guys watching. The season should be here in no time. And I'll see you guys next time.